Yeah. I have to sign those.
I need to hear back from you about
What's
the screening on the MC Hotel.
the dark screen? It's
Yeah.
a little itty
They
bitty
gave as a sample.
patch that's they got posted up there.
If you like that, then I'll tell them to give me the okay.
Martin? Yep.
Are we on?
We're on.
Good morning, good morning. Yeah. That's a clue as to how we're going to do this.
Oh, boy.
Good evening, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local papers and also posted in the lobby of this building. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding meeting that we have powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we're obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide a basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate for judicial hearing should be maintained at all times. We have a number of things on our agenda this evening, and first of which is our roll call.
Chair Nguyen,
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock,
Here.
Mr. Schwartz,
Here.
Mr. Cook,
Here.
Councilor Schlager is excused, Ms. Willis, here, Mr. Rooney,
Here.
Mr. Ianwali,
Here.
Ms. Lockman,
Here.
Mr. Barr, Mr. Gilmer.
Here.
Okay, we have minutes from our July 22nd meeting.
I've received revisions from Vice Chair Brodock and Ms. Lockman. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Okay. Motion to approve?
Move. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Okay, we have a few resolutions, first of which is the 59 Glenridge Avenue LLC matter.
That resolution is not yet completed. I didn't hear back from Mr. Gassion.
All right, so we will table that to our next meeting. Next is the resolution on the Adaline Master Property LLC.
Mr. Chairman, I received comments both from Mr. Brodock as well as from Mr. Ianwali. I trust everyone else. Yours came today, Tony. I don't know if everyone's had an opportunity to see the changes that were proposed.
I had one question on Mr. Ianwali's revisions. Do we need a cross easement? Is it going to be one for, like, are they both going to
I took
record
out the
it?
cross easement. I thought, maybe Arthur can figure that one out. I thought cross is mutual, so you said
And I
one
thought
property
that-
needs an easement over another.
And I thought that's what
They're going to
we,
need both properties.
yeah.
Oh, they'll need
Do
both?
the turning.
Because-
Each equally need
Right.
an easement to access the other property.
Oh.
And he
All right,
owns
then-
both, he owns both properties.
Yeah,
Well, he
that's,
won't in the future, though, so.
That's-
but
that's
the other,
true.
The other, wait a minute. What we care about, okay, I know that we care about is the fact that the property that we heard needs an easement over another. What do we care about the other property?
because they need to be able to back into the
But
applicant's
isn't that their
property.
problem? It's not a planning issue. I mean, they didn't come before us.
But I think
So-
that's the only way that the site plan worked, really, is that in order for the non-applicant's property to be properly parked, they would have to be able to turn into the applicant's property if the applicant was parking cars right along the side lot of his, or sideline of his property.
And we don't want to approve something that's going to compromise a neighboring property.
They agreed, by the way. They
All right,
agreed on the
that's
record
fine.
to.
As long as that doesn't make it more complicated, yeah.
The simplicity of it being in one document as opposed to two. So it'll all be expressed in one document packet.
That makes sense.
So how do you want to word condition 6?
I had an issue with perpetual right myself. Depending on what happens back there, it may not be perpetual.
Well, it can't be a term on it. It has got to be until something else happens.
I guess.
Yeah. it should be, as long as nothing changes, that property always should have a right to access, right? I don't know.
Or until something changes.
Yeah.
So why would you not say? Why would you not say perpetual?
I would just say
what would
that
you
there'd
say?
be a cross easement, and as the need arises later, when they put up the parking deck, there may be a whole change in configuration. I don't know what's going to be back there and how they're going to maneuver. So that's why when I drafted it, I didn't really put in any term, perpetual or otherwise. I just figured, as the need arose, because it's a mutual property owner, they own both properties, that it would get worked out one way or the other. That was my thought process.
Can't we just say instead for, just get rid of perpetual and just say, allow for the right?
Yes,
You don't need the
absolutely.
word perpetual.
Well,
Just the right.
okay, here's either, you need it forever until something else happens. So if it's not forever, then you put a term on it. By not defining it, then you have nothing.
So what
So-
happens when the Midtown lot gets built?
Well,
And
yeah,
let me
you
just finish,
said that
Tony.
about the Midtown lot, but the whole application that we did, let's leave aside the eastern
I
property.
understand.
The whole application is, if something bad happens and there's no access to the rear, the whole plan that we approve fails. Because the whole presumption is based on the fact that they have we approved a variance down, they have to have 4 parking spaces or whatever the number is, and that's what makes our approval valid. So
Just so you know, construction drawings were filed that reflect exactly what was included in this plan.
Okay. So I was assuming when I looked at that plan that that's pretty well fixed. So what we were looking at is the ultimate plan, and that if I were that property owner, and if they were building something big in back of me, I would go to the town and say, I want to make sure I have a right to access the property as I have been for a long period of time. That's the proper thing for that property owner to do. What we saw, it worked, right? And we're presuming that it worked. If they don't have the parking, then whatever we did in terms of granting a variance is moot. Because it underscore, we're saying it's okay to build this addition as long as they have 4 parking spaces. So we're presuming that everything is going to work out in that way, and the ability to preserve those parking spaces over time will be preserved. So I don't know why you need to, I don't think we should assume that the town is going to interfere with access back there. They've had it for, can you imagine if all those properties weren't able to access their rear yards after all those years of that being a parking lot? I don't think that that's going to happen.
I don't think it is either, because I think did we require them to, or did we suggest they
No.
have an agreement with the township? Was that one of the conditions?
Yes, we said that they enter into an agreement, but only for the...
But that was only for the garbage?
Only
For
for
the
the
garbage.
dumpster, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
but we granted the variance based on the evidence we heard, and part of that evidence was the plans for the Midtown deck,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, my comment, we can move on, but my only comment was that I thought that the property in question, in order to park in those 4 spaces that were part of the evidence that we considered when we granted the variance, I just want to make sure that those parking spaces were usable. That's it. And the only thing I thought they needed was an easement from the adjoining property. Whether or not the other property needed it from this property, I kind of don't care, because they weren't, that property wasn't being subjected to our review. That was my only comment.
My recollection was we decided they needed a cross easement to make it work, really for both properties.
That's fine.
So it's subject to.
Well, we were just talking about the term, whether it should be a long time, perpetual, or not define it. I'm saying it has to be, they have to work forever. Why should they work only a little bit, or work for it indeterminate? Normally, an easement would run with the land. So you grant your neighbor an easement, it runs with the land, and that's forever.
Well, this will be recorded with the deed.
Yeah.
So,
This resolution recorded with...
no, the easement,
Oh, no question.
yeah,
So
we'll
wouldn't that be
run with the
forever?
land.
Yeah, run with the land.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it will,
Right.
by its very nature.
So why not say it?
Of course, you don't have to.
Well, then what, if you don't give it,
If it
then there
runs
has to
with
be a
the
term.
land.
You make it for 10 years?
No, it's until the deed is lifted, the easement is lifted or
Or
amended.
the parties, the 2 owners of the properties.
Correct.
Whoever the 2 owners,
So it
they can
runs
change it, but
until
until
they
then.
mutually
it-
agree, right.
Until the mutually agrees, right. So, and you don't need to state a term.
Okay. I disagree, but go ahead, that's fine.
All right, so we're back to noting it's a cross easement, but not including a term.
Right, so
Right.
the sentence will say, paragraph, the applicant shall enter into a cross easement agreement with the property owner to the east. The agreement shall allow for the right of 403, 405 Bloomfield Avenue, I can't read it, as a portion of the property to the east for the purpose of providing vehicular access to the parking area. I think that's fine.
Is it shall or must?
Tony had it set up as the agreement should allow for the right.
Oh, I meant
Shall.
shall. Yeah, shall is right.
Yep.
Are there any other comments?
Just noting Mr. Brodach's comment about before any certificate of occupancy shall be issued, the applicant shall forward a draft of such agreement to the board attorney.
And I assume, 'cause the version that I received, Arthur didn't have any footnotes either.
And
I don't know what happened to them.
I don't know either.
And
So,
even-
but I
even-
resent it to everybody on,
Still no footnotes.
still no footnote?
I think your firm may have one of those programs that automatically inserts stuff in the footer, and it may have deleted footnotes.
I
mean,
saw it before I sent it.
Oh.
I saw them before I
And Ms.
sent
Lockman,
it.
you didn't see him either? I looked today in your revised,
Yeah, I looked at
your
the
version from,
revised one, and
My
it's still-
apologies,
still
wow.
didn't
I'll take this up with my IT person who will be fired tomorrow.
is that part of the resolution?
I just asked, though, you say a draft of the agreement will be sent to the board's attorney.
To
Can you,
Arthur.
yeah, can you say for approval? I mean, so they send you a draft, or,
Well, that's, yeah.
It's understood, but
We
why
don't-
not
We
say
don't
it?
issue the CO until the board attorney
reviews and
agrees.
approves.
Yeah.
Reviews and
Approves,
approves the draft.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just the way we.
You don't want to say it?
That's just the way we operate.
I understand that, but if you just look at this outside of this meeting, it just says they'll forward you a draft of the agreement. It doesn't say you have to approve it, which I would think,
Okay, we'll add it.
yeah.
Wow.
A lot of
That's
these
good.
agreements, I look at a lot of these things.
All right. So you want to say for approval? Instead of review, you want to say approve? I don't want to be in a position of approving an agreement between two landowners. That's why I said review. It's not my job to approve their agreement. My job is
Then why are
to-
they sending you a draft?
Well, you have to prove that the language meets the requirements of the
Right.
resolution.
So that it
Yeah,
conforms.
that's what I mean, yeah.
Oh, for conformance with this
With-
resolution.
Right.
With the resolution, that's all.
Right.
So can we add that for review and, I don't want to say approval of conformance, that sounds strange, but
I'll come up with
To
some-
verify it's,
Review and
yeah.
of conformance with this agreement.
I think I capture the,
give the essence of what we're looking at here.
yeah. But I am going to fire the IT person.
That's your
Zeitgeist.
choice.
Any
So-
further comments? Any further additions or changes? Not, I'll move as amended, that we accept the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
All right, that brings us to the application of Platinum Interiors.
Platinum Interiors LLC, 96 High Street.
Mr. Chairman, I may have missed it, but did you make an announcement concerning the other applications?
I didn't make an announcement. It is showing up on the website. We have two other applications that are listed on tonight's agenda, both of which are being carried to future meetings. Item D on the agenda, Jonathan and Melissa Goldeal, the 264 Upper Mountain Avenue. We don't have a specific date on when that will be
I
rescheduled.
received confirmation from the applicant that it will be carried to September 23rd.
Okay. And then there's the application of the Montclair Art Museum, and that's being carried to the August 26th meeting.
You know, I was thinking about that. There may be public interest in that, and that's probably the worst meeting date. If there's any public consideration of that, on behalf of the public, I think that should be moved to the next meeting after Labor Day.
We've got a full agenda. I've got, just so you know, they're aware that, and they've noticed for August 26th, we already have 37 Orange Road coming on our first meeting in September, because we have to bring in Mr. Galvin for that. And I have other applications that are already scheduled for the second meeting in September, including the Goydell application. So it's really at the applicant, it's not the board's I don't know if it's the board's decision that they can proceed on a date that we've adopted as part of our calendar. They've already noticed for it, they've got all of their experts all lined up for that date.
I'm with Martin, and I said that at the last meeting. I also think that it's not really fair.
If that's the case, then you should not have that meeting on your calendar. You know, we adopt a calendar at the beginning of every year, and we have it at the 2 meetings in August.
Yeah, but there are less applications with less interest for the public than this one, and that have less of a lasting ramification on the town than this one.
I'll let you weigh in.
So there are time periods when the MLUL,
understand.
and the applicant has to consent to whatever the adjourned dates are, because if we don't hear it, if we don't deal with it, there's at least a chance, it's not a real chance, but if there's a chance that an applicant could say, okay, you didn't deal with my application in a timely fashion, I'm going to go up to the Superior Court and I'm going to get it granted just as a matter of course.
Hasn't the applicant themselves pulled this on 1 or 2 times, or was that us?
That was them.
What do you mean pulled?
No, it's the
They
applicants who
rescheduled.
can
The
do that. They have
applicants.
that right.
I understand. We're making an effort to protect the public's interest here, not just enforce municipal land use law. So there's a dual consideration here. Both the applicants.
Martin, what you're arguing is policy versus the law.
I'm
In that
trying to
dichotomy,
find
the
a
law-
balance, Counselor.
No, I appreciate that, but the law will win in most of those battles.
Understood.
I mean, can it be raised with the museum that perhaps that's not the best date and that we should move it forward a month or whatever?
We've been trying to schedule their application, I think, for a month and a half now. They've continually carried it.
Well, that was their
All the more reason
initiative.
to bump it.
What are the chances it's a one-night application?
It's really for exterior improvements. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
But absent the consent of the applicant,
I understand that.
I mean, they've already noticed for it.
I think at this point in time, the best we can do is ask them if they will move it.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to move it, then we proceed on the 26th when it's scheduled. And again, if this is going to be a problem, because who's to say that this application, is really any less important than an application on my street with my neighbors, So if we are going to raise this issue at all, then we need to not have a meeting at the end of August.
This particular application may not cause any controversy whatsoever.
It
but
may
this-
not.
It may.
But the same thing with the application of your neighbor.
Understood.
So, that's how we have our schedule set up.
Understood.
And we should discuss that at the end of the year when we're fixing our schedule for next year. So we can address it with them, but for the moment, it has been noticed to the public for the 26th. And if the art museum consents to move it, then we can move it and they will have to renotice. If not, then it will be held on the 26th. And now, we do have an application before us this evening. again, for 96 High Street. Good evening.
Started off well and remembered to turn on my microphone for a change. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Alan Tremulak. I'm appearing on behalf of the applicant Platinum Interiors LLC. This application. This is a application to subdivide property at 96 High Street into 3 lots. Property is located in the R1 zoning district. And I think, as you've probably already seen from the subdivision map that we've submitted with this application prepared by Richard Hingos, property is unusually large lot in this neighborhood. It's approximately 32,000 square feet, or 3/4 of an acre, roughly. It's also a through lot in that the property runs from High Street all the way through to Nishawane Road. It's approximately 330 feet deep. Property has a existing single-family house with a detached garage located on the High Street side of the property. The rear portion of the property fronting on Nishawane Road is vacant, undeveloped, essentially a very large rear yard. Goes all the way to Nishawane Road. We're seeking to subdivide the property and create 2 new lots on the Nishawane Road side of the property. One lot would be approximately 51 feet wide, the other approximately 52 feet wide. The minimum width requirement for this property is 60 feet, so we are therefore requesting variances for lot widths for both of the 2 lots. We believe, however, that the lot widths that we're proposing are consistent with the established lot widths of property along the easterly side of Nishawane Road. I believe there's approximately 27 lots on that side of the street, and 2/3 of those 27 lots, I think 18, have lot widths that are actually less than the lot widths that we're proposing. This will be obviously developed in the course of our presentation in support of the variances. There's also lot depth variances that are also triggered by the application. We believe that the 2 lots that we're seeking on Nishawane Road would be preferable to simply dividing the property in half and creating one larger lot on Nishawane Road, which would be 100 feet wide and significantly out of character with the established neighborhood, which consists of smaller lots and smaller homes on that side of the property. We also think the application is consistent with the objectives of the master plan, which seeks to encourage development consistent with established neighborhood character and neighborhood scale. I have 2 witnesses to present in support of the application. We've submitted already the subdivision map, as I mentioned, prepared by Mr. Hingos, which lays out the lots that we're seeking approval for. And my 2 witnesses this evening are Melanie Factor, who's basically the applicant here, and Peter Steck, our professional planner. So I would, I don't know if you have mark exhibits, Janet?
Sure. A1 is the application dated February 1st, 2019. A2 is the certification of taxes paid. A3 is the proof of publication. A4 is the affidavit of service. A5 is the subdivision plat prepared by Richard Hingos, dated December 21st, 2019, received by the office on July 2nd, 2019. A6 is a three-page submission showing elevations of the proposed houses on the site. A7 is the engineer's report dated June 24th, 2019, and A8 is the planning report dated July 3rd, 2019.
Okay. I'd call Melanie Factor as my first witness.
Before you do that, can I just ask one question?
Sure.
From my looking at the document, it looks as though you're proposing to take the one very large conforming lot and to create 3 non-conforming lots. So you're creating 3 lots, none of which conform to. Is that correct?
That's correct. Based on the way the ordinance is written in terms of in determining the established lot depth or the average lot depth, somewhat distorted here because of the fact that there's some unusually shaped lots here. But yes, there would be variances required for all 3 lots.
Thank you.
Melanie Factor, first witness.
Ms. Factor, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Would you please state your full name, and I imagine it's an LLC, so would you state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. My name is Melanie Factor, and I am the owner of Platinum Interiors, LLC.
Melanie, you've indicated you're the owner of Platinum Interiors. Does that LLC own the property located at 96 High Street?
Yes, it does.
And when did your company acquire that property?
We purchased the property in January of this year.
What is your primary occupation?
I'm a real estate attorney in Montclair. My office is at 47 Park Street.
Okay. And how long have you been practicing law in Montclair?
This is my 19th year.
Okay. Have you had any prior experience with real estate development or renovation projects?
Yes. Obviously, my primary source of income is with my law practice. On the side, when an opportunity presents itself, when I find a project that seems like it would be interesting, and when I'm not outbid by multiple other bidders, I would do a project that interests me. I've restored old Victorian homes. I've built duplex properties. I restored my office that's on Park Street. I've probably done, in the last 25 years that I've been in Montclair, I've probably renovated maybe 10 or 12 properties.
Okay. All right, but your primary income is from your real estate law practice?
Right.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the property at 96 High Street and what it is that you'd like to do with the property. First of all, can you describe what's currently located on the property, structures?
Sure. So on 96 High Street is a very large center hall colonial with, as Ellen had mentioned, a detached garage. My intention and what I'm currently working on is to restore that property. And then the hope would be to build 2 houses on the parcel that fronts onto Nishuane. But I'm currently restoring the house on High Street at the moment.
And is your intent to maintain the existing detached garage?
Yes.
And I think there was a shed on the property at one time. It may be shown on the subdivision map. Is that still there, or has that been removed?
No, that's been removed.
Okay. Okay. Are there any structures between the garage and the property, the rear of the property that actually fronts on Nishuane Road?
They're not. Other than the house and the detached garage, the only thing that's on the property that you might not expect is there's actually a street lamp in the middle of the backyard.
Okay. But it's otherwise vacant land that's
It is.
never been developed, to your knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so if this application were to be approved by the board, what is it that you intend to do with the subdivided lots in the rear?
Well, what I'd like to do is build 2 smaller homes on Nishuane, houses that are more in line with the properties that are already currently on that street. Obviously, on High Street, I have a huge, large house there, but Nishuane has more reasonably sized homes. And the purpose of this application is because I think that the 2 houses, 2 smaller houses, would just look more consistent with that street than to build one larger home there.
Did you consider just building one larger home on the property?
Well, that actually was my intention, and it was, someone said to me, I think that would look silly, why don't you build two? So I said, oh, great, I'll do that. And then I called you, and I think you said, you can't just do that.
Needed approval to do that.
Right. But I just, to me, it just seemed so natural, because that, to me, I think fits in better.
And you submitted a sort of a conceptual drawing showing the exterior elevation of a proposed house.
Right. That's
Correct?
just an idea. It's an idea that I came up with that I thought, after driving up and down Nishuane 100 times, that I thought would look consistent with Nishuane Road, and also, look nice with, other homes in Montclair.
Okay. And these plans were submitted with the application, correct? I think they were marked maybe A6. Janice, but I think the board members have. This consists of 3 sheets, correct, Melanie?
Yes.
Okay. And I realize this is just conceptual, but there are some floor plans attached to it. How large would the house be in terms of square footage?
So the houses each would be 2,114 square feet.
All right, how many bedrooms?
So what I'm suggesting is 4 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, or possibly 3 bedrooms with a small office. The bedrooms are not so large.
Okay. Would both of the houses look the same as the exhibit that was marked A6?
Well, this is just a general idea of what I'm proposing. The other house would be consistent in design style, but obviously we would want them to look different.
Okay. And are you wedded to this particular design, or are you flexible in the event that the board somehow wanted?
I'm very flexible. I thought that this would look nice. If anyone has any other suggestions as far as design, or I'm open to that.
Okay, but you thought that this was something that was consistent with the neighborhood in terms of the look of the house as well as the size?
I did. If you drive down Nishuane Road, there's all different style houses. You've got ranches, you have some split levels, and I thought that this would be a nice sort of addition to that.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the houses would sell for? Realize that's hard to say given the timing, but any idea as to a price point?
Don't hold me to this. I'm going to guess 600,000.
Okay.
Maybe a little more.
Okay.
I mean, the idea is that I'd like to put, instead of building more huge houses, that I think a lot of us don't want. I mean, if you look at what's on the market right now, all those big, huge $1-million houses, they're all still sitting there. Nobody wants those big, huge houses anymore. I think that to build a house that, a modest income family could afford would be, a good addition. There's not a lot of developers that are building houses like this. They're all building huge 5,000 square foot homes. So that's why I thought this was a good idea.
Based in part on your experience representing buyers and sellers of property in Montclair?
Absolutely.
Do you think this would be a benefit to the community by providing a smaller house as opposed to a larger home? Smaller houses as opposed to one larger home?
I do.
Okay, for the reasons you just mentioned, is that right?
Well, to me, the biggest reason is I just think aesthetically, 2 smaller houses would look better. I've driven down the street 1,000 times, and I just think this would look better. That's my main position. But yes, obviously, the other benefits of having a new construction $600,000 house would be something that would be a benefit to people moving here.
Okay. That's all I have for Ms. Factor.
Sure.
I'm looking at, I don't know if you've got, Janice sent out a memo with the properties. I don't know if you've seen this that I'm referring to.
Yes, we have.
And I'm looking at the non-conforming lots versus the conforming lots. on page 7 of Janice's memo. I'm not sure that you have that.
Yeah, we have that, yeah.
And I'm kind of curious because I'm looking at the Nishrain Road, and it looks to me as though in the immediate vicinity of the lot that you want to subdivide, that almost all of those houses are conforming lots. And I was listening to the fact that you're saying that that it's out of place, but it seems to me that all those lots, except one that's right next to the property, they're all conforming lots. So I'm trying to reconcile that with your saying that a house on a regular sized lot, a conforming lot, would be out of character with that neighborhood.
Well, all I would say, Mr. Steck's going to testify to this, and he expanded this analysis. If you take it all the way down Nishawane Road.
But in this vicinity, wherever you want to
Well-
divide the lot, they're all conforming lots except for one.
Well, except for one that's immediately adjacent, and if you go further to the south, there's 4, the
It's around the curve.
red-colored ones
Yeah.
are red.
They're
and
around the
actually-
curve, but in that particular setting, there's only one small lot, and all the rest of them conforming, so that what we would be doing would be creating, a cluster of non-conforming lots, whereas right now, we've got all conforming lots except for one.
Well, again, that depends how you define the neighborhood. I mean,
Right.
there are 27 houses or lots on that side of Nishawane Road, and I believe 18 or 20 of them were non-conforming.
They were all down the road, is all I'm saying. But that's all right. I just wanted to make sure that you're, I just couldn't reconcile that dividing that lot would make it a more conforming neighborhood. I just didn't see it on looking at the map here.
Could I say something
Oh,
too?
I didn't even evaluate
Just keep in
those.
mind too that even though those lots
not
marked in
changing
green
the-
are considered conforming, they're nowhere near the 100-foot width that this lot has. This lot is just so much bigger than the conforming ones. Right? I mean, some of these are, this is so small. I can't-
Well, the minimum is supposed to be 60 feet, right?
That's the minimum required.
Right.
That's the
Although the
minimum required. And
majority,
so that
we-
means that all of these in green are at least 60 feet.
Right.
Okay.
So, Ms. Factory, hi, first of all. Hi. You gave some testimony about the benefits of having a $600,000 home for new people coming to the neighborhood. What is your expectation would happen if a house is assessed at $600,000 right there? How would that compare to the houses that are already there now, and how would that impact the immediate neighborhood? How do you think?
Well, I do know that some houses on Nishawane have sold in the low sixes in the last 12 months. So I actually think that price range is consistent with that size of a home on that street. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to some extent. Do you have any analysis of that, or is it just your gut? I mean, like, are you saying newly renovated homes? What? Existing homes? What is your take on that?
Well, I just know that there are houses, I think Alan had asked me, do you know what you would sell this house for? I said, no, I actually hadn't really thought about it. So I looked up on the MLS to see what had sold on Nishawane Road in the last 12 months, and there were houses, I think, for, don't quote me, I think it was like $640,000. So I said, well, it would be somewhere around there.
I have a question. So the material that we have doesn't have a site plan. Why did you not include a site plan? Only because you've got the renderings of the houses, which, I don't know much about, but there's a little bit of a grade change, and I think personally a site plan would be useful to us in reviewing this. Did you decide not to do it for any particular reason, or did you not think about it?
Well, I can answer that,
Okay.
because, we're not required to submit site plan, because single-family houses are not subject to site plan review by the board. In terms of the grading and drainage,
Well,
that would typically be...
I hear you, but in this case, a variance is being requested, so maybe my complete point was that since there's variances that are being requested, and there may be certain features that the applicant is providing that overcome the negative aspects of the variance. And I guess I'm not asking a question, I'm making a point. It would be nice if there was a site plan, that's...
Well, we can certainly submit one if that's a requirement of the board, but I just wanted to explain why we had not.
I think generally what we would call them are plot plans.
Right.
For the house, it's not a site plan, just,
Right.
what's usually submitted is a plot plan.
Which is like completely devoid of any useful information.
Right. It shows the house.
No, I'm saying, but there's a grading issue, there's screen, there's all sorts of stuff in the site, and I don't want, I'm not asking for a plot plan, I'm asking for a developed site plan with topo and whatever you need. Like the houses that are proposed have garages in the front, so instinctively you want to know what's the slope of the driveway leading up to that garage. How does it work within the setback, those sorts of things.
So prior to, just jump on that point, prior to any improvements on the proposed lots, it would be subject to submitting that plot plan, and at that time addressing grading and drainage and all other...
After the variance has been granted.
Standards. But in order to propose any development on those proposed lots, in order to construct any development on those lots.
But they're asking for a variance.
Correct.
And what you're saying is the review will occur after we grant the variance? Which is my point. The point is to get the info before the variance.
The review at this time of the application is for a subdivision of the property.
Which includes
variance.
Right.
But those variances are not directly associated to grading and drainage. But I'll defer to the attorney.
They're bulk variances.
They're zoning variances.
There's positive aspects and negative.
Correct.
And to the extent all I'm saying is that to the extent there could be lots of great things that are shown in the site plan, it would make my little decision here with one vote, I'd be able to absorb a lot more information and evaluate the positives and the negatives. That's all I'm saying, just for me.
So I'm not sure where Mr. Vuich's review letter will be addressed. I don't know if that's you, Ms. Factor, Mr. Stack.
I can testify, or not testify, but testify too, but...
Swear him in, please. No, we don't want to go there, Kevin.
I can represent, because a lot of these issues that we were just discussing are addressed in his report, and we would comply with all of the comments and recommendations and requirements set forth in his report.
Some sound like, item number 2 is testimony shall be provided to confirm that the subdivision will be filed by map or by deed.
Okay.
There may be others in here that are hard to just accept.
I can answer that one. If it were 3 lots...
I figure that's an easy one.
If there were 3 lots, I think we'd have to file it by map. If it were 2 lots, we could simply file a subdivision deed.
Sure.
Okay. And how many trees are on the property currently?
Do you know?
I don't. The trees are all different sizes. Some of them are maybe an inch or 2 in diameter. It's an overgrown kind of, and then there are larger trees. I obviously would keep as many trees as I could. And the trees are, if you've seen the property, they're all up at the front near the street because the whole lot had been cleared out, I guess, as a backyard for the other house. So I would think that, except for where the driveways will come up, I'd like to keep all of the trees. I mean, obviously the smaller twig-looking trees I would not keep. But the majority of these, my intention is to keep, and I think that with the plans that I'm proposing, I would be able to do that with the exception of where the driveway comes into the houses.
So if I could just piggyback on that, for the existing, the proposed lot 30.01, which has the existing dwelling on it, looks like from the revised subdivision map, there's three trees over 6-inch caliper. Is there any intention to remove any of those 3 on the developed portion of the lot currently?
No, I have had all of, there was a dead tree that I've already removed.
Okay.
That was right next to the garage. It was completely dead. It was a very large dead tree. And then the rest of the trees, I just had pruned, and but I did remove the large dead tree that was at the back left corner of the garage. When you're standing in the driveway.
Okay, so to the rear behind it, not in front. So the locations of the trees on proposed lot 30.01
All of the trees on High
are-
Street, on the High Street side,
Okay,
have
are remained.
all remained.
Okay. Okay, so it doesn't look like there'd be any affected trees on the existing developed portion.
There would
And
not.
it'd be subject to the plot plans for the other two proposed lots
Yes.
on which trees would have to be removed in order to construct driveways or address slopes or any other grading issues.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's about 20.
I have a question for Mr. Tremblay. I have in my file two versions of the proposed major subdivision map. One was received in Janice's office on February 1, one received on July 2. Can you make any kind of representation about what the differences are, if any?
Well, I think the trees are noted on the more
Okay.
recent plan.
Anything else? I saw that there are elevations as well.
Yeah, their elevations are noted and trees are noted. I think the basic plan hasn't changed, but there's more
Agreed.
detail with the
But
topo.
I just didn't know, I wanted somebody to say what the differences were.
And it's basically the topo and the trees are noted on the plan.
Are those all the trees or just trees greater than 6 inches?
I think it's trees greater than 6 inches.
So I'm just struggling a bit with if you put 2 or even 1 house right along Nishuane, how you're going to save all those trees. I mean, how would you build a nice house with a front porch that's going to look at just a whole mess of trees in the very front yard? It just
Actually, no, I
doesn't.
mean, if you look at the picture, they're, do you have this picture?
Oh, yeah.
Referring to, I think it's photo 5 attached to Janice's memo.
I mean, it's not a whole mess of trees. There's a lot of, twigs and things kind of coming off of those trees, but the majority of the decent trees, I don't see any issue with being able to work around them. There's not very many if you look at the picture.
There's about 12 or 13
Yeah.
trees.
Figure 8 has all the trees. There's a lot of trees.
Yeah, I mean, looking at
right
the
there
plot
in the
plan, there's a
front.
significant number of trees greater than 6 inches.
Right.
Right in the very front along Nishuane. It just,
Right.
it seems a little odd. And this is where I agree with Mr. Ianwali, having the plot plan right up front would be helpful. You know, where's the driveway going to go? Where do the houses sit? And, you know, as we've done in other applications, it doesn't necessarily tie you to, that's exactly where the house has to sit, but it's got to be within those bounds. The driveway would have to be within the bounds that you show us. It would just be a little bit easier to understand the full intent and how it's going to impact the site.
Okay. And we can obviously provide that if the board is.
It would be my intention to remove as few trees as possible, obviously.
I understand that. It just, I think once you actually plot out, this is how wide the driveway needs to be, here's where it has to go, here's where the front porch is going to go. Like, once you start putting those pieces into the puzzle, I think you start to realize
There would
there's
be
gonna
no trees removed for the house or the porch. The only trees being removed would be for the driveway. That's my intention.
I think the concern, and the question is more relative to the comparison, specifically to the lot width variance being requested for those two lots. The comparison of constructing one home on one lot to the rear to Nishuane, and how many trees would be removed for one driveway as opposed to 2. And that directly plays towards the variance and the proof of that variance that you're requesting.
Okay.
What is the minimum setback for the houses on that particular?
It's hard to tell.
I found it very hard to read these. They're very small and even
Well,
magnified, they don't come out.
the requirement based upon the average of the 2 lots on each side is, I believe, 25.77 feet is the required setback, and that's what we're showing on the plans.
Have you considered, instead of putting 2 houses, you put a 2-family house that's larger looking?
It's a one-family neighborhood.
I'm sorry?
A larger looking 2-family house on this lot instead of 2 smaller houses? These houses are pretty narrow. They're 30 feet wide.
But
That would require a variance from the zoning board.
You're gonna have to get a variance.
Use variance.
there just aren't, in that section of Nishwain, there aren't any two-family houses. I just thought that this would be more
Yeah, it
appropriate.
just would make a larger house instead of two. These are pretty narrow houses. They're only 30 feet wide.
They seem to be consistent with.
So, in keeping with Steve's suggestion, I'm not endorsing it whatsoever as it is being kicked around. I want to read you one of the objectives that appeared in the 2016 Master Plan Reexamination Report. It's a carryover of a objective from 2006. It says, number 2, to ensure that new development is harmonious with existing development in scale and style and does not harm the quality of life of surrounding neighborhoods, particularly at a time when development pressures are high. And so I think addressing that question in totality is an important one for this year.
And that's what we're trying to, part of our presentation is we believe that given the existing neighborhood with smaller lots and smaller homes, that what we're proposing is consistent with the established neighborhood, which is what the zoning, the master plan encourages. We can debate that, but we believe that this is consistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan, particularly that one.
Any further questions from the board? Are there any questions from the members of the public of this witness concerning what she's testified about so far? If there are, please step up.
Good evening. William Scott, 23 Cedar Avenue. I think you indicated you are considering either building a one house, one family house, or 2 one-family houses. Will these houses have basements in them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Beverly Irby, 26 Nishwain Road. I'd like to bring up...
These are questions for the witness at this point. It's not if you want to make a statement, if you want to opine on the application, that's a little later in the proceeding. But this is a chance to ask the witness questions about what she's testified about so far.
Or if you want to make your statement in the form of a question, you could do that too.
Only if the chair lets you get away with it.
I don't know how you could build 2 homes on that land without taking down all the trees. I don't understand that at all. And there has to be at least 35, 40 trees on that lot. And the only ones that are small that I've seen for the 45 years that I've lived there are sprigs. The majority of the trees are humongous trees, big trees. And I would like to know how you would build 2 homes there and not bother with the trees. That's my question.
Well, like I've said, they would be removed where the driveways would be, but the entire footprint of the home is well beyond where those trees are located. So yes, of course, I have to remove the trees where the driveways would be, but those would be the only ones.
So you would be removing more trees than you mentioned?
No, I would only be removing the trees that were absolutely necessary in order to put in the driveways. There would still be the existing, the trees don't come.
I know how they look because I live right next door. I know how they look. My question is how you would build at this time.
Well, so my
first
intention,
question-
a lot of the trees are not very attractive. I mean, we've got just some stalks, a lot of them don't even have leaves, a lot of them are dead. They've clearly not been maintained. I've taken care of the ones on the High Street side. I haven't touched anything on this side yet, but my guess would be that when my tree guy were to come, putting this application aside, my guess would be that when my tree guy were to come and do the back of this, a lot of these trees are not viable. Some of these smaller ones with no leaves and just a stalk. But what I'm saying is that my intention, all the trees along the side here would all stay. You can see there's no trees in this section here, which is where one of the driveways would be. And yes, whatever trees need to be removed to put the driveway for the property here, yeah, I would have to remove that.
They might help if you explain how wide the driveway would have to be to indicate how many trees would have to be removed. Because the driveway is for a two-car garage, it's going to be a fairly wide driveway.
My intention is that it's really only it's like a 1.5 car garage. The garage would only be for one car, and then
variance. I'm sorry, then you need a parking variance because you have to have both. That's a whole different story.
Should be parking cars in the front yard.
Yeah, what you showed me is a two-car garage. In order to avoid a parking variance, you have to have a two-car garage that's recessed from the front of the building, which you did show on your plans. But that would require a wider driveway. It would, basically an 18 to 20-foot wide driveway. That's just to give you a little bit of...
I believe that the garage right now is 17.5 feet wide. So if that's a two-car garage, then great.
Well, get out of the car.
That's you have, I'm not going to interpret what you submit.
Okay.
I think that if you don't want another variance, you have to say that this is going to be a two-car garage. Because otherwise, you have to apply for a parking variance.
With
RSIS.
For parking space. Submit, while submitting a zoning application on the proposed lots once they're subdivided.
No, there's no,
It's backwards before.
I assume that once this is approved, and you have the variance for lot width and lot depth, there should be no more variances. If they're going to build the house and it's not going to be a two-car garage, that's another variance. They can't build the house. If it's not a two-car garage, they can't build that house without a variance, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And they'd have to come back to the...
Burden reads approved now, you can, maybe not in your rendering, but you can construct a home that will have no variances, including compliance of the two-car garage.
I can do that.
Is that what's typically shown on a plot plan?
That's why I was asking for clarification, essentially whether or not we're doing the zoning review now of the proposed lots for their review, or there will be a zoning application approval of each lot individually after subdivision is already filed as well.
Well, it's a lot easier to do a zoning review with a site plan, and we can go home. I'm sorry, listen, I don't be flip about it. There's a lot of information, all the questions that I...
You can't call it a site plan, okay, because that's...
What?
You can't call it a site plan.
Okay, then a fully featured, you have to show a lot of stuff. And right now, I think what we're seeing, like, people are asking about trees. What is it going to look like after it's built? What is the garage going to look like? Where the house is going to be? All these questions will be answered on whatever you call the plan, not a site plan.
Right, and quite frankly, I think all of us are having a hard time understanding your testimony about the trees and how it functions based on what we're seeing in the limited drawings, that we see here, and trying to reconcile that with your statements.
I mean, from what we've heard, I think it's clear that we're going to need to come back to you with whether we call it a site plan or a plot plan, but to show, how the houses would be laid out, where the driveways would be, and the trees that would be removed and the trees that would be maintained.
And I guess that you can park two cars in the garage. Somehow that has to get in there.
In bringing that information back, then you will be able to tell us how you're going to build two houses on that lot without removing all the trees?
That would be one of the primary purposes.
Okay.
I'll do that.
And also in that plan, it would be building the two houses without variances for setbacks, et cetera, because this truly is only the setback, only the variance for lot width and lot depth. Right. Because that also is a little bit unclear for me from the current plans, whether there would be other variances potentially triggered, which it seems like there could potentially be. So
there could be if we're not providing a two-car garage, but I think we'll be clear in that we are and that we meet and we don't need any other variances. Certainly, there are no setback variances, and the house would otherwise be built in accordance with all requirements, height, etc.
Hello, my name is Keith Obadike. I live at 34 Nishuane Road. So my question is, has there been any testing of the soil for pollutants, for radon, or any testing of any groundwater on the site?
There had been an underground oil tank next to the main house on High Street. That was removed, and there was no contamination.
Are you aware that this area has a history of radon? And so has there been testing for radon?
Not outside in the lot, in the main house, yes.
Okay, so we're concerned about new construction on the lot, and we want to make sure that due diligence has been done there, because there's a history all around the property.
I am aware of that. I'm not aware, can you do a radon test above when there's no structure? I'm not aware of that.
Well, the whole neighborhood is subject to a serious radon contamination.
Right,
problem, and I think
right
everything-
before construction existed, but since construction has not existed on this lot, we think this lot was not tested, and that's why we're asking if you've tested it.
We'll look into that. I mean, I would think it would have been subject to the remediation plan where all of the surrounding properties.
Yeah, so we're curious, because we haven't seen the
We're taking-
EPA documents, so if we find it. we'll let you know.
Okay.
We'll look into that.
Keith Obadike, 34 Nishuane Road.
Mr. Trembulack, can you describe this remediation plan a little bit, with a little bit more?
I can't, all I know is, I don't know how many years ago it was, but there was a major radon problem in that part of town due to an old, I think, was it a watch factory many years ago that was there, and I think a number, houses had to be evacuated, and there was this...
Torn down, excavated, soil was removed, and I would have thought that they did the whole area.
Right.
To determine as far as it went from that original factory site, but, I haven't seen the documentation, so I wouldn't know exactly.
Any idea how long ago that was, Tom?
That was like in the 70s?
Somewhere around there.
In the 70s, yeah. 80s?
90s.
Well, I mean, it started, I think, in the 70s. And, yeah, there was a lot of, there was litigation, there was determination, sampling, there were houses that, some houses were torn down, even as far up as the old Pines gas station. The area in the rear of the gas station was excavated, soil was removed, and that's certainly, I think, at least as far away from the center as this property was, so I would have thought that they would have tested it, but again, it was a long time, stuff sat there for a long time. It was quite a bit going on there, so.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to just add a little bit more to that. William Scott, 23 Cedar Avenue. Being a member of the Parks and Rec Committee, we had an opportunity to work with the EPA to build an open space facility which would have replaced their administrative offices that they used for the management of the Superfund at that time. I had an opportunity to speak with the site manager going back 2005, something like that. And I did establish get some information from that individual because the township was expanding their Department of Community Services garage in the Carries Woods section of Nishuane Park.
I'm sorry, Mr. Scott, I have to interrupt. May I swear you in, please? Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you have just given, as well as the testimony you will give, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay. And just to continue, matter of fact, when I started really taking a look at this application and understanding that there was some history within that immediate area of a Superfund site, I started researching some of the documentation that's provided by the EPA. Now, there's a question of how many properties on Nishuane, which is obviously what we're concerned with, were involved in that remediation process. The number could have been in the entire area between Nishuane, Virginia Avenue, and Franklin Avenue. Could have been up to 40 houses. I don't have the exact number, but what I did do is I put a call into the regional site manager at that time. From the EPA standpoint, the office is in New York, and I had requested a complete site list of that super fund in that entire area. Because as the gentleman just said, posed a question, we don't know, even though that site, this particular property has never been built on, had it ever been tested, or has it ever been dumped on, okay? So that's very important in this major situation, because also in that remediation process, they opened up Nishaling Road. They put in new sewage, new drainage. Houses had to be completely lifted up off their foundation. So it was a major undertaking. It took about 20-plus years. Not that you made a bad investment.
Right.
Cancel
my application, I don't want to build any more.
You just want to make sure that the due diligence is really there, and this is a major concern of the community.
I
Because
appreciate that.
we go in and start opening up this particular property up, and only God knows what the town might be involved in as well as the property owner. So I don't know if you want my contact number for the regional manager, or you just
That'd be
want to
great.
pursue that yourself.
No, I would really
Okay.
appreciate that.
Her name is Betsy Donovan. That's Donovan, and her number is 212-637-4369. And as I mentioned, I was requesting a complete listing of all the sites and properties that were involved in the remediation, so we could get a better handle. I know some of the properties go up Nishaling, but I don't know how far they go up Nishaling is what we're concerned with.
Do you happen to know if the properties on either side of this lot were affected?
Well, that's what I asked for, the complete
Oh, okay.
list. Okay. That would give us the-
I know it was on the opposite side. It was not on our side.
Opposite side of the street.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dr. George Bennett, and I live on High Street. Ms. Factor is a lawyer, and I just wanted to ask, it was rather casual about the possible cost of the homes and what she might make of it. And I wanted to find out, didn't you give this a fair amount of thought about what profit you would make from the renovation, 2 houses versus 1, especially when you said that larger homes don't sell as much, because it'd be tough to sell a $1.2 to a $1.4 million home on Nishaling versus 2,700. Isn't that the motivation, profit rather than community development, to put 2 tiny houses
That's a fair
in
question.
a non-conforming lot?
Thank you. I do this because I enjoy being creative, renovating houses. This is a sort of a hobby of mine. I make all my money and support myself very nicely with my law practice, so this really is just a hobby. I can tell you that all the properties that I renovate, I put way more money into them than I ever see getting out of them. So I'm way more concerned with how things look, doing a good job, being proud of what I do, versus how much money I make. Some properties I renovate, I don't make any money at all. Obviously, that's the goal, is to make something, but to also do a nice project and something that I can be proud of. I still drive by 74 Montclair Avenue, which is a beautiful old Victorian home that I renovated 20 years ago. I still drive by it. I bring family when they're in town by it, and so I want to do something that I'm proud of. So that's what's most important to me. The cost versus of building 2 houses versus 1 house, if you're comparing let's just say, for example, a 4,000 square foot house versus 2,000 square foot houses.
It wouldn't work in that neighborhood. The cost differential wouldn't work in that neighborhood. Since you're saying that it would be for for people who could afford such a lot. The other question that I have, I don't understand the point that you made about the non-conforming 100-foot lot with 1 house on it, why it would be aesthetically displeasing. A nice home on a nice lot, I live on a big lot, I don't see the problem with 1 house on a lot versus, if you put a beautiful home on a on a 100-foot lot, that's fine. You know, I don't think the people on Nishwayne would have a problem with a beautiful house on a large lot. Montclair is full of irregular lots or non-conforming lots and so forth. Mine is non-conforming. I mean, it's kind of weird.
I guess the only thing I would say to that is that if on Nishwayne, this is just my aesthetic opinion, if on Nishwayne Road there were some larger homes, some smaller homes, which we see all over Montclair, but Nishwayne Road is...
This is your opportunity.
True.
I'm not being facetious.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity to put, look, on Pleasant Avenue, they've put monstrous home on a really tiny lot. If you go outside, if you have a 2-year-old and it takes a run, it'll bang itself into that fence before they take 5 steps. That's, to me, not conforming. It's not consistent with the neighborhood and big homes on Pleasant Avenue. I just don't understand why this isn't an issue.
I think that one home would just, by virtue of the size of the lot, just be a much larger home, and I just don't think it would look as consistent as...
Again, I say, why not put a 3,000 square foot home on a 100-foot wide lot? It wouldn't look so out of place. Thank you.
Any?
My name's Phil Feeney. I live across the street on 27th Avenue. First, thank you for actually considering building a house there, because it's quite across the street from my backyard, so it'd be nice to have something.
Can you speak up?
Sorry. Is that better? So I was looking online. There is actually a map. I think it's from the Montclair Historic Center that shows that your lot, I think, was a cut-through street at one point in 1909. And I believe that's why you have such a large lot right now. You could just Google it. I can email it to you if you want. And I know also from talking to neighbors that that lot used to be used as a cut-through for the kids in the neighborhood, because there is no way to get into High Street from Nishwayne. And you sound like you want to build the community. We have pedestrian alleyways all through town. That's one of the things I love about this town. Would you consider, making one house and then maybe making a pedestrian alleyway going through? So this way, the size of the lot is not 100 feet, and we have access to High Street and without having to go all the way around the corner.
I'm going to be honest, I haven't thought about this, so...
I know I'm surprising you with
I
that.
didn't even think, I have very old surveys for the property. This is the first time I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
And the lot is completely fenced in, so that must have been a very long time ago.
Well, the kids, they say used to use there's an opening in the fence, and the kids in the neighborhood used to go through that yard to get to High Street.
So,
and it would be great if the kids
I would be willing to consider it for this lot. I think it might be a problem for the High Street house.
Okay.
Because the property line is near the house on the one side, and you've got the driveway, which is fenced in on the other side. So I don't know how that would work for the already existing house, but again, it's the first time you're bringing it up. I could think about it.
It's just an idea that I had when I was looking at it, so I don't know.
Who maintains those pedestrian walkways?
I believe the town does, right? So.
The ones that we own.
Yeah.
It's actually not an easement, it's deeded to that we own, we maintain them.
Right. So that's why I'm kind of
So I'll
proposing
sell you
is
guys a
that-
4-foot strip.
Yeah. Because we only have one in South End right now.
You volunteer.
All right, we can work that
So if
out.
that's possible, I would like to see that be thought of, because it's really,
I'll think about it,
it would
sure.
increase the walkability of a neighborhood like a lot.
Is this being done now?
Wait.
Are people
No, I'm just saying that right now. I made it up.
do people use that as a pedestrian walkway in the
From
last
what I was told,
50
the kids
years?
used to do it in the neighborhood. I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know if they're doing it currently. The lot's been empty for years, so it's very possible that people could have been using it as an unofficial cut-through.
Okay.
But if I want to walk out of my house, I have to walk all the way down to Virginia or all the way down to Nishwayne before I can get around the corner.
Okay.
So I just thought it would be something that would be...
Okay, thanks.
I have one more question, unless somebody else has one.
in keeping with the character, form, style, and scale of the neighborhood, you mentioned that you had renovated the 96 High house. Can you give us an idea of the extent of the renovations you've undertaken there? And
Sure, well, it's still ongoing, but I've kept all the original moldings, I've kept all the original doors, I've kept all the floors. There's some beautiful radiators in the house, I've kept those, they're all going to be restored to working order. The house will have, on the inside, your standard facelift, redoing the floors, repainting, all new light fixtures, new kitchen, new bathrooms. It had been a 9-bedroom house. I have made it a 5-bedroom house. With that additional space on the 3rd floor, I've made a large living area. The outside, new roof, I've fixed all the siding, I've replaced all the windows.
So it's not a gut renovation, but it's a pretty substantial renovation.
The kitchen and bathrooms were completely gutted down to the studs.
Not to focus on cost, but just as a frame of reference, can you give us an idea of what you think because we're really not into the numbers here, but it's a way to judge character and form. Can you give us an idea of the overall cost of the renovations you put in or are putting in there?
Well, so the budget at the moment is $300,000.
Okay. Right. So major renovations.
It's a very large house.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Any questions from the board? All right, counsel, call your next witness.
Mr. Chairman, can I request a short break to talk to my client and Mr. Steck before we proceed with his testimony?
Sure. We'll do take a 5-minute break.
And maybe do some investigation with regards to rain.
And that too, you know.
I'll take care of that. I'll call this woman.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's somewhere around town hall, but that goes back.
We're back on.
Okay, we're back on the record.
So Chairman, I've had an opportunity to discuss this with Ms. Factor and Mr. Steck, and it's obvious based upon the comments we received that we need to come back with more detailed plans, plot plan, whatever, showing trees, driveway locations, things of that nature. It wouldn't make any sense to put on Mr. Steck's testimony until we've got a revised plan. So we would like to ask that this application be continued, and I think, talking with Janice, I think the first available date would be October 7th. So we'd ask for the application to be continued to that date, and we would waive any time constraints for the board to act on the application.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and no further notice will be required unless you add or subtract a variance, unless you add a variance. I guess we don't have to renotice if you subtract one.
Right.
But if you change the variances, if you add it, then you have to renotice.
Council, did you catch that?
Just said if you don't have to renotice unless you
Right.
add.
Unless there's additional variance.
Yes.
And I guess there's been a lot of question about whether a garage at 17 and a half feet wide is wide enough for 2 cars, and I think the consensus it is not. So you'll
We're
have to...
going to look at that issue.
If you can provide details and a garage that's a workable 2-car garage, okay, on your plan. On the plot plan.
Yeah.
All right.
We intend to,
So that's
respond to all the issues that have
October
been
7th.
mentioned.
October 7th. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oops.
Oh, no.
Anything else?
No, is it?
Committee reports, bills.
Yeah. Any new business? Committee reports?
Just so that the board knows, I know the changes to the zoning ordinance that came out of, that the board considered at the last meeting, have been sent to the council. The council discussed it at their conference meeting this month. There were no questions, so I believe that it's going to be introduced at the second council meeting this month.
That's a second reading?
Second reading. No, that's just the introduction. Second reading will be in September.
Okay.
Probably a month after that. The one change to the ordinance that was recommended by the Economic Development Committee was the means by which average front yard setback is measured. Just so you know, right now, it's calculated as the 2 closest houses in each direction. There was a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee that it includes a larger area, so they wanted it 1,000 feet in each direction.
Wow.
Whoa, that's a lot. Yeah, and either way, some of these are...
Yeah, blocks are.
Exactly.
20 more than blocks.
They wanted to have it reflect the larger neighborhood, not give priority to the houses that are closest to the subject property.
That makes sense if indeed the larger neighborhood has not been hacked up
Right.
into smaller lots already. Otherwise, they are
Like this
then
one.
eliminating, effectively emasculating the zoning of what the prevailing zoning there by what has occurred potentially for some bad decision-making in the past.
So my suggestion is, once this is introduced, I'll bring it back to because you had asked that once it be introduced, even though it came from the planning board, if there's any changes, that you have the opportunity to report back. So that's the only change. So I'll bring it back to you for discussion after it's introduced.
Okay. So, this is the Economic Development, here by the Economic Development Committee, I make this comment. Do they exist? Who are they? Where do they meet? What do they do?
It's a
I know, but we talk about the economic, I'm saying this as more of a citizen in Montclair. The Economic Development Committee is this mysterious entity
that we
not
hear
for this
about, but
area,
we
it's
don't know who it
public.
is.
We do know
And when
who
they
it
meet,
is.
their meetings are not
It's
public,
Sean
are they?
Spiller.
Are they public?
It's a subcommittee.
They
of
are
the-
public. How do
No,
we
it's
find
not.
out?
It's a.
I can, if you give me a chance, I can explain to you. The council has, much like you have subcommittees, the council also has subcommittees. The Economic Development Committee is one of those subcommittees of the council. They don't have a regular meeting schedule. They meet as needed. And according to the way the council is structured, items such as zoning and the master plan and redevelopment go first to the Economic Development Committee before it goes to the full council.
Oh, I didn't,
And who's
this
on
is
the-
new,
and
this
who's
is
on the
good news.
committee
I thought the
currently?
Economic Development Committee had people that weren't on the council.
No, it's just the council
Oh.
members.
Then
Subcommittee of the council.
I stand corrected, okay.
Okay.
But they do
I-
hear from other people as needed.
Well, just like
Developers
we
will
do.
go before them at times.
Exactly.
Home Corps can go before them. Different groups can go
depends
before
on what's
them.
on the
So they
agenda.
have meetings with non-subcommittee folk.
It's much
And that are
like,
not, there's no minutes, there's no recording, there's nothing. So
That's
it's a-
right.
Yep.
They should change their name to the Economic Subcommittee, Economic Development Subcommittee. No, I really thought it was some committee that was not.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense then.
it's kind of how the council conducts their business, much like you conduct your business in a subcommittee format.
Could you give us a status of the no knockdown draft at this?
I don't know. I know you submitted a report, the HPC submitted a report, and the zoning board submitted a report, and each entity had a different recommendation. So I know right now, the township attorney is reviewing those recommendations and preparing a report to the council. In the interim, the moratorium is being continued every month.
So I called him to ask what the status of that was about a week and a half ago, and was told there was no change to the status, so I guess
He's working on it.
okay.
Percolating.
Did each of those entities vote in some manner, as we did,
Yeah.
as to whether it's consistent? So far, each have voted that it is.
Like officially, the planning board statutorily is required to make comment. Obviously, the HPC and the zoning board both have roles in the process, so the zoning board was really commenting on their role,
Right.
because anybody who contests or if they appeal a decision under that, it goes to the zoning board, and so the zoning board really focused on the appeals process. The HPC focused on the breadth of they wanted to have more, as Steve is, more applications come under their purview.
Right.
Than what was in the ordinance.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And yours
They
was a
want
little
the
bit
whole
different, so
package.
each
They
board
want
had a
that
different
now.
perspective.
That was my point. That's consistent at least, in the end. Yes.
So those are the only updates that I have so far.
Hey Janice, you know, the new parking deck that was subject to that, is there, will there be any sort of public unveiling of what the garage is going to look like?
I don't believe so. I know construction drawings were filed. To my knowledge, I don't think that there's any public meeting, because we actually.
No, I'm just wondering if they're going to be just, people can look at them or
I don't
whatever.
know. I know that
Site plan.
the public discussion really was held here, a year ago when they presented their initial plans. The plans look pretty much similar to what they presented to the board here. It's just the fine tuning of the details.
They don't have any renderings of
No.
of the exterior. So
No new
it's just,
render-
it's very technical
Right.
drawings that they have, so.
Right. I do know they an RFP was issued for the public art. I don't know exactly where we are with reviewing the public art, but the council is overseeing that. And that'll be ultimately decided by the council.
Janice, with respect to art, it came up when we were looking at the parking deck, that map of the old Montclair that's on Glenridge Avenue that had been painted on a building in the early 80s was to be looked at to be renovated or restored or whatever. Is that going to happen?
Not as part of the garage project, no. We don't own that building.
I know, but
It's not part of the scope of the garage project, no.
But doesn't mean it'll be painted over either, so. It's just a, you have to talk to the owner
Right.
of the property.
Mhm.
Something that has to be negotiated with them.
Yeah.
All right, bills.
Motion to approve the bills?
Second, third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
All right, everybody, thank you.
So our next meeting's August 26th, which we have 2 applications that night.
Okay.
Okay?
Feels like it's right around the corner.
Who, we talked. Can, anybody, people let me know who will not be here on the 26th?
I will not be here.
Will not be here.
I'll be here.
We already did. That was September 23rd. Okay, sorry about that. That was at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, I just want to get an idea of how many people will be here for that meeting.